Good morning, everyone, and thank you all for joining us for this very special webinar with the Victorian Treasurer, Tim Pallas. I'm Paul Guerra, Chief Executive of VCCI, and it's great to have you all here. Together with Dianne Smith, who's the CEO of the Melbourne Chamber, who joins me, and you'll see her shortly. We are practicing responsible distancing today. We're delighted that the Treasurer has given our Melbourne Chamber members a unique opportunity today. The Treasurer is not long after a press conference as well, so we might get an update from the Treasurer on that one as well. It's incredible times for everyone at present, but we are navigating as best we can, largely with a steady and experienced Victorian government. The key member in that team is the Treasurer, Tim Pallas, and it's my great pleasure to introduce and welcome the Treasurer today. Treasurer, good morning.
Great to be with you, Paul, and thanks very much for the opportunity from the Melbourne Chamber to be with you.
Wonderful, Treasurer. Many of the audience will be joining us at 11 a.m, where I know you'll give a broader overview of the state. So if you're okay with this, we might move straight into questions, please. Wonderful. Dianne, who's the first one from?
Thanks. Good morning, Treasurer, and good morning, everyone. We've had many questions from the Melbourne Chamber membership. The first is from Anita De Silva from Oricon. The state government is to be commended for keeping the big build program and construction going. Can you provide further certainty about our future infrastructure pipeline? With New South Wales bringing forward $7.5 billion of projects, will priorities be revised for Victoria?
Well, I can firstly thank Louise for her question and also indicate that the government takes our responsibilities in terms of providing a counter-cyclical role in investment very seriously. We've played a very substantive role in making sure that we have a clear pipeline of infrastructure projects for some period of time now. And of course, we've got something in the vicinity of about $107 billion worth of work happening this year alone in both our core government agencies and our associated government entities. So right across the whole of the Victorian government. If you look at just the core areas of government, we're over a mark of tripling the 10-year long-term average year-to-year of investment by the state. So close to $15 billion from just government budgeted funded infrastructure works. We accept that there is more work that will need to be done, and we believe that our investments around infrastructure will be a vital part of that. To be able to do that, we will need necessarily to work very closely with the industry, both in terms of residential, but also civil construction. And I want to put on record my appreciation to the role that the industry has played working with us, making sure that we have COVID compliant working arrangements that have been very difficult, I think, in many respects for everybody to do. And it's, I think, no small testament to the goodwill within the industry that we've been able to get business, workforce, unions working together to get those arrangements in place. So to cut a long answer short, yes, there will be more investment that the state will be making on infrastructure. We will be quite precise about where that investment goes. We will be looking to find those areas in the industry that can bear more work rather than those that are under considerable strain due to the requirements of our current construction obligations. We see that being mainly in the tier 2, tier 3 areas, small to medium capital works and maintenance. And also we certainly take the view that from a government point of view, we will be continuing to work with the industry, both in terms of straight D&C construction, but also how we engage the private sector more to leverage their investment. And might I say, I think we've had some pretty positive discussions with the Commonwealth about what we can do together.
Thank you. And the second question is from Mary Barone, who's the CEO of Homesland Institute. Given the priority is certainly to encourage training and education post-COVID-19, do you plan to increase funding, particularly for those Victorians who may not be able to afford tuition fees going forward?
Well, thanks, Mary, for your question. I think there is no doubt that we've put an enormous amount of time and effort, particularly into our TAFE sector, recognising that the utility of skills and the accessibility to training is vitally important. That's why our Free TAFE initiative was put in place, and it's continued to grow over the years. We started with an initial contingent of courses that we saw as being priorities, in the sense that people would be able to move into areas of obvious skill shortages if they acquired the appropriate skills. And that was something that they could do for themselves in terms of their employability, but also for the state in terms of filling those holes in the skill gap that was inhibiting our capacity to deliver health services through the NDIS and its uptake, or indeed infrastructure spending through the skills required in our building, construction and engineering sectors. So our Free TAFE priority initiatives have been valuable and vital, and they will continue, and we will continue to make further investments into this sector. In response to the pandemic last month, the Premier announced a further $260.8 million package, which includes about $192 million guaranteed to lock in funding at expected pre-COVID-19 levels, and an additional $68.9 million in crisis support to ensure that Victoria's public training systems can respond and recover from the pandemic event. So we're looking at how we can ensure that Victoria has the skills necessary to participate in economic recoveries, and TAFEs will play a vital role in that. And I also say that our university sectors are also going to have a vital role to play. We are in discussions with the universities. We've brought a bit of goodwill through our package to assist international students. And we want to see that we can get better integration between skills and learning between our TAFEs and our university sectors, so that we can have better utilisation of people's studying time going forward. But there's no doubt that TAFEs are going to play a vital role in our reconstruction effort.
Thank you. Jeff Smith, who's the CEO of SCT Logistics, has asked, would you like to comment on the initiatives that state government intends to implement simply to encourage additional private investment to the Victorian economy? And related to that, Deb Meeker from First State Super has said, what role do you see super firms playing in the recovery?
Well, with super, can I cut to the chase and say I would very much encourage the superannuation industry to work with us. I know this has been hard, and I'm not critical of the super funds. They do have obligations to their membership to ensure that they get the best possible outcome. I think increasingly the safe haven of state infrastructure works will be seen as a key part of any investment portfolio that looks to ensure that you're protecting the interests of your membership. But there's more work we need to do with the industry, and I'm very much conscious of the fact that that engagement is a bilateral one. It's not simply governments saying that we'd like industry super funds to do more. We have to recognise that the product that we're putting into the marketplace makes those companies satisfied that they're meeting their fiduciary responsibilities to their membership. On the broader issue about unlocking private investment that Jeff asked, our immediate focus really has been on ensuring that as many businesses as possible survive through the pandemic event. There's no doubt that this is a quite traumatic and indeed economic substantial event. We're seeing, for example, a drop in consumer spending of in excess of 20%. When you look at the last recession in the early 90s, the drop in consumer spending was about 3%. So that gives you an order of magnitude of the enormity of the event that is currently unfolding. So we've invested about $1.7 billion in our economic survival package, and with other measures that we've put in place, including ones that I announced today and yesterday. All up, our support for community and businesses has come to $3 billion. Now, that's all occurring at the same time that we're increasing the level of support in government services. So, as I've made the point publicly before, it normally costs about $1.3 billion to run the state of Victoria. It is costing about $2.3 billion to do that at the moment, a week. And that is happening largely because the community needs support from government. And it's happening at a time that our revenue base is substantially eroding. We're in no special situation in the sense every government across the planet is encountering exactly the same things. And the worst thing that you can do is timidity of effort in terms of support for both business and community at this time. So as a government, we're always willing to work with the private sector, both in terms of PPPs on our major projects like the Melbourne Metro, the Westgate Tunnel and Footscray Hospital. Sure, some of those projects have encountered difficulties, but we're refining our model and we're hopefully giving greater certainty to investment going forward by the state being prepared to assume increasing levels of risk, but recognising that once we strike a contract, we expect those terms to be honoured. We know that the Victorian government alone will not be able to kickstart the economy. We'll have to work in partnership with the private sector to boost jobs and investment. After all, we're about 1/7 of the size, that is state government effort, of the Victorian economy. So we're also working to reduce regulatory barriers to investment. For example, we've got a new focus through the Building Victoria's Recovery Task Force, and that's due to make recommendations to help business fast-track investment in the construction sector.
Confidence is so important as part of this recovery. The next question is from Bryce Prosser, who's the General Manager of Corporate Affairs and Communication at the RACV. Recognising that regional small businesses, in particular the tourism sector, has just been so badly affected throughout this crisis. What's your view on how we can possibly ease travel restrictions within Victoria for interstate visitors and eventually for overseas to particularly help these businesses in our state?
Well, I think we know that tourism is a vital part of the Victorian economy. Might I say, so is hospitality, so is our major events strategies. All of these things are encountering considerable difficulty to operate under the social distancing arrangements that have been put in place. And that's probably why the prediction that I made that Victoria would be probably harder hit than most economies is reflective of the composition of our economy and the high dependence that we have, for example, on international students, on tourism, and of course on our major events strategy. So we know that tourism is a key driver of our economic activity. We've already said that we want to prioritise a revival of Victoria's tourism and major events industry, including sports, arts and music, to support our clubs, pubs and hotels. Obviously, those international travel restrictions are a matter for the federal government, but I think, to be honest, it will be quite some time coming. The key focus of the National Cabinet and this government has been to make sure that we can secure some certainty around economic activity within the state and across the nation. And progressively, we'll see those international barriers come down where we have confidence that other countries have got in control of the pandemic event. And as you're probably well aware, the Prime Minister yesterday had the Prime Minister of New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern, attend the National Cabinet to talk about a medium to long-term plan to open up our borders to New Zealand. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will happen. It will be a sign of things to come. So in terms of domestic restrictions, we're going to continue to monitor the restrictions. But the worst thing we could really do is to lift restrictions too early and spike infestations again and lose public confidence by reinstituting social distancing rules. That will hit confidence. It will also hit people's confidence about the way that the government has managed the event. So we have to recognise that going harder at this earlier is probably the best economic strategy. And I know that Martin Pakula has been very focused on how we can kickstart the tourism sector once restrictions are lifted, particularly in regional Victoria. So we're gearing up to start a campaign for bushfire impacted communities just as the pandemic set in. We've obviously had to wind that back, but we will get back into the market as soon as is reasonably possible, extolling the virtues of tourism and regional destinations and Victoria as a tourism and destination product.
Dianne, we've probably got time for one more quick one.
Every member asked about reopening timelines, Treasurer, and as you just identified there, obviously it's very important to lift restrictions appropriately. But specifically, Diana Perry from the Bevington Group did ask a question: will our excellent public transport systems be safe and sustainable when more commuters are returning to their normal workplaces?
Well, I think this is a really important question because what we've seen is patronage on our public transport system drop as low as 10% of the normal commuter traffic. We've found in other jurisdictions that the return of people back to public transport as opposed to using their individual means of travel, such as their car, is a little bit softer than one would expect. It's not a bounce straight back effect. And part of that is their confidence around the cleaning efforts that the government is putting in place. So we're working with the concessionaires, both Guerra Trams and Melbourne Metro, to make sure that we're providing a sufficient cleaning staff so that people have that confidence. We didn't wind back the service, so there's that continued predictability of service even during the pandemic event, and we expect that we will see people progressively return to public transport. And what we can do, I suppose, is demonstrate the best way that we can give people confidence around our public transport system and its safety is a continued effort and investment in cleaning of our public transport assets, and also to give people some confidence that our tracking and managing of presentations of COVID as it appears within the community is probably one of the best in the world. And being able to track and trace representations of the virus is vitally important. It helps everybody have assurance that we aren't having unknown presentations occurring. People are not being affected from unknown community sources. When that happens, then I think we get the community to a point when they can have certainty that they can travel with safety.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dianne. Thank you, Treasurer. We've covered a lot in a short period, but we're due to head to the main webinar from here. Like you, we think a fundamental part of the recovery is to ensure that once we start, we don't stop. So the Victorian Chamber has developed a COVID restart checklist, which is there. And we've also developed a COVID restart guide for workplaces. And that is going to, both of those will be available free of charge to the Melbourne Chamber members. Very comprehensive documents, and we hope you use those in your environment to put together a restart guide for your individual businesses as well. We think they'll be an invaluable guide for you. So with that, I'd like to introduce the Victorian Chamber President, Karen Sobels, to conclude what has been a fantastic and informative discussion.
Thanks, Paul, and thank you, Treasurer. Treasurer, through everything you've said today, answering all the questions, the theme of working together kept coming through, and it's not just working together, but working closely together. And I think you'll agree life has changed more than we could ever have imagined it, even just at the start of the year. And we do forget that we came into this pandemic on the back of bushfires. So we are challenged in a lot of different ways, but working together, we need to find a way forward and find what our new normal is. And working together with the Melbourne Chamber, who we work very closely with, but then in our next webinar as well with our broader membership, is really important. And we want to thank you for continually coming back and checking in with us and being part of working with us to work together.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate all the great work that Melbourne Chamber's doing.